But I think that there's let's call it a lost art, especially in today's world where we're surrounded by loads of information, loads of people telling us what we should and shouldn't be, should and shouldn't do. It's really easy to lose track of who you are. So you really do need to find the power or the energy to use whatever it is that you're trying to use to please other people and turn it inward. Somebody put it really good to me. They said, our freedom lies on the other side of discomfort, right? And the most uncomfortable thing is to look in the mirror and do that work on yourself. It's so easy to just project it outward.
Yo.
Hey, man.
What's up, man? It has been a while. The last time we met was at a diner.
That's right.
And here we are on Diners and Deals.
Full circle.
I love it. I'm here with Josh Zolin, the CEO of Windy City Equipment Service. We met, is it 6 years ago now?
Had to be at least 6 years.
I think so. And we'll get into all that, but welcome to Diners and Deals. I am so excited for you to be on that side of the table because you have an incredible podcast. You've been doing a lot of work for the community, and this is a chance for you to just relax, just like we would, and chit chat. Of course, we're here in an office somewhere in Phoenix. We're not in Chicago at the S&G Diner. Noise issues wouldn't allow us to do that. By the way, everyone, and you'll get photos later, 7-Eleven, I still want you to be a sponsor, okay? You're the best store in the world. Chris Tanko, I'm talking to you. I've got on all types of swag. We'll get some photos of that later. The ladies out here, everyone agrees that 7-Eleven is the best store in the world. You need to be a sponsor of this podcast. But anyway, dude, it's I've admired your journey. We've had a chance to become really close friends, and I appreciate you being here to talk to us about the entrepreneur's journey and the ups and the downs and all the stuff. How you feeling today, by the way?
I'm good, man. So first off, thank you.
Of course.
Not only for the kind words, but for inviting me on your podcast. It is nice to be on this side of the microphone for once. Every once in a while I get an opportunity to do this, and it's a lot of fun, and so I appreciate the opportunity there. And
of course.
Yeah, man, I'm feeling great today. Actually, my younger brother, I can't call him little brother. My younger brother got married yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we had the whole wedding and reception and all that yesterday. It was amazing. So today it's just a reminder of all the happy things in life, man.
Yeah. That's incredible. Well, we'll talk more about that. So tell us about the company.
Yeah. So as you stated, my name is Josh Zolin. I'm the CEO of Windy City Equipment. Not based in Chicago.
But there are some Chicago roots.
There are some Chicago roots. So my dad started the company. He's from Chicago. Started the company in 2003.
Wow.
And then I came on in 2008. So he had the company for about 5 years, repairing restaurant equipment. So at that time, just hot side restaurant equipment, fryers, ovens, stoves, that kind of stuff. And for lack of a better term, he was a trunk slammer. He was, chucking a truck. That's what he did.
Tell everyone what a truck. I mean, I think everyone gets it.
Yeah.
But what was he doing? Let's talk about what his day looked like.
No, I appreciate the specificity. So, he was a technician. He was out there fixing fryers, fixing ovens, fixing stoves for commercial restaurants. Yep. And so that's what he did. And his roots in Chicago, we don't have to get into all of it, but he was a stuntman. Then he got into some of my roots too, but then he got into being a foreman at a bakery. So he got his hands dirty, like actually fixing equipment. Yep. Then when he moved out here, because he absolutely hated the cold, he already had a trade to fall back on. So he started to build on that just by himself. Yep. And he's a very personable guy. So he just went in, made friends, and said, "Hey, I can fix that for you."
Wow. That's amazing. And today, just give us some stats that you're comfortable with on the company. Like, it doesn't have to be revenue or things like that, but number of employees, number of locations that you take care of, cities that you operate in, the trades that you cover. So from those origins in 2003, you joined in 2008. Yep. today, what does the company look like?
So today, as it stands, we are about 65 employees. We operate in 3 states. We're in Houston, Albuquerque, and here in Phoenix and Tucson. So we have 4 total branches.
Wow.
And it's been fun. We do more than just restaurant equipment now. We do commercial refrigeration, commercial HVAC, as well as some rooftop installation, new installation, fabrication, stuff like that.
Because those assets, let's take an example. Do you want to name well, I don't think we need to name a restaurant, but if you want to, you can,
Sure.
right? They're not only going to have cooking equipment in the restaurant, they're going to have refrigerators and freezers, and they're going to have a cooling environment.
That's right.
And so and we can talk about, if you want to, how these trades are different, van stock, different technicians for different types of jobs. But you entered the market just taking care of hot side.
Yeah.
Now you're taking care of multiple types of equipment. You saw the opportunity to service the entire portfolio of that equipment at a location. So you've grown, right, the number of services that you provide to the same client.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Which is, as you know, infinitely more profitable than just gaining new business, right?
Absolutely. The tricky thing though is, right, especially if you have a portfolio, now you've got a portfolio of services, and now you're typically going to be servicing a client with multiple locations.
True.
And so you're only as good as your last service job.
I love that you said that.
Take it from there.
Yeah, that's a motto of ours, right? And so the way I put it to my team is, our reputation is all that we have. Our reputation is our signature. That's how it's written in our values, right? And so the way I tell the general public is, they tell you that after high school, reputation doesn't matter, and they lied. It absolutely does. And this is exactly why, because you're only as good as your last job. So every single job that a technician goes to, he needs to make sure is done accurately and performed efficiently, and just to the utmost of their ability. They need to make sure that piece of equipment is working flawlessly before they leave, to the best of their ability. Yep. Otherwise, it blows back on us right away.
Especially in your environment. And we're gonna do the Diners and Deals format here. I'm gonna take you back, but it's really interesting. Like, when I started my career in this industry broadly, which I call the built environment, right, which is buildings and assets within them, right, in the real world. And I started in industrial, and we had a number of clients. Caterpillar was a really big client of mine. We actually took care of the production equipment, the production lines. We had uptime contracts, right, for the manufacturing lines within the facility, not just outside the yellow line. We were operating inside the yellow line, not just the enabling infrastructure, the chillers and the boilers and the landscaping, the building envelope. We were actually operating the production line. That's where they make money. That is the most critical thing. You step into a restaurant and you're fixing the cooking equipment. That is the production line. That is down. They are not making money. That is up. They are. So like, you are providing mission critical services to your clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything's an emergency, right? Yeah. Especially when you're dealing with something like that. And that's another thing that we say, is that we can't dictate what an emergency is. A customer may call and say, hey, I've got a fryer down, and we know for a fact that they've got 10 fryers. So to us, it's like, well, what is the emergency? But to them, it's like, no, we only have 9 fryers. You don't understand. You've got to get here.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. It's an incredible business for those who, and it's hard to operate at scale, which it can be, which we'll talk. So let's go way, way, way back, because you mentioned some stuntman work in your father's background. You alluded to, you might have dabbled in something. Yes. So where did you grow up?
Good question. So we'll go all the way back.
Yeah, please.
So I grew up technically in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Okay.
I started my life in Simi Valley, California. So my mom and my whole maternal side were stunt people. Yep. My grandfather doubled for Charles Bronson. He was one of the trailblazers in the stunt industry. Literally just died last October at 94 years old.
That's a great life, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, he was an incredible person. What he accomplished. So anyway, him, my mom, all my uncles, they were all stunt people.
Wow.
My mom and my dad met because my dad wanted to be a stunt person, so he went through their stunt school.
Wow.
So they got together. So both my mom and my dad were stunt people, moved out to Kenosha, Wisconsin, opened up a stunt school there.
Wow.
So they had since separated. They separated shortly after that happened. My dad went to work for the bakery in Chicago.
Yep.
And my mom continued teaching the stunt school. So that was the original family business. The stunts are in my blood.
I love it.
And that's what I grew up doing. I started teaching that stunt school when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
And when I turned 18, I moved back out to Hollywood and I pursued that career all the way up until I came to Arizona here.
All right. So explain this dialogue with your father.
Yeah.
That got you to be like, all right, I'm giving this up. I'm coming to Arizona. Dad, I want to run this business with you.
Yeah.
What was the pitch?
So it was more of a plea. All right. You asked a really good question. So I will say that even though stunts is what I knew and what I thought I loved, it wasn't who I was. I grew up thinking that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. That's what made me cool in high school. My license plate said J Stunts, for God's sake, you know, and so I moved out and just fully prepared to do stunts the rest of my life, you know, but it caught up to me. I looked around and I saw my uncles and my grandfather limping around and, you know, they're sore from head to toe because of some of the stuff that their bodies go through.
Yep.
And not only that, Seth, but what really got me was just it wasn't in my DNA to be the crash dummy for somebody who someone else deemed more important than me. Because what happens, right? If the actor gets hurt, production shuts down. Stuntman gets hurt, it's next man up. And I just that never sat well with me. So when I say it was a plea, I made a decision that I wanted to get out of the stunt business because I was going through this, call it an identity crisis, right? I didn't know what I was or who I was or what I wanted to do. So I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I have no idea what you do for a living.
Yeah.
I have zero clue what's entailed, but I know that there's opportunity in it. And I know I don't want to see you on your hands and knees for the rest of your life. So how can I come out there and work with you?
That's amazing. You know, there's a lot to unpack there. We could do 2 hours on the unpacking of the identity formation of entrepreneurs, right? You know my history. I'm public about some of it, but you know, I remember when I could no longer, you know, my identity became around 12 years old. I was going to be a basketball player. And then I was going to be a basketball player and a coach. And then I started to get injured and I came back from that. And then eventually the injuries caught up with me and I couldn't be cleared to play anymore. I started to coach Division I basketball when I was 19 years old as a student assistant and then as a full-time assistant. And then I needed a break from the game. Yeah. And I had to go figure out who I was without basketball, right? And then that started a whole journey that I'm just really onto now, this transformation that I'm going through. You and I have talked about this. I started to write a song just this week because superhero mythology has played a big part in my transformation as a professional and as a person. And I was taking a look at a lot of superheroes and their origin story and how it's based in trauma. And I started to write this story about, as opposed to going and flying off and doing what you've been told to do or what you thought you were, what if instead you took those powers and you used them on yourself and you became what you wanted to become? It's a theme I'm riffing on a bit now. It doesn't matter when that happens to you in your life, but you have to listen to it. So can you want to dive? I see you. I see the wheels churning. Yeah. Do you want to riff on that a little bit?
Sure, man. I think that's a really incredible way to look at it. And there's a lot of ways I think to look through that same lens, right? Whether it be superheroes or whether it be self-awareness or whether it be, IFS therapy or whatever, but I think that there's let's call it a lost art, especially in today's world where we're surrounded by loads of information, loads of people telling us what we should and shouldn't be, should and shouldn't do. It's really easy to lose track of who you are. So you really do need to find the power or the energy to use whatever it is that you're trying to use to please other people, to make other people think something of you, and turn it inward. Because at the end of the day, I think somebody put it really good to me. They said, discomfort, our freedom lies on the other side of discomfort, right? And the most uncomfortable thing is to look in the mirror and do that work on yourself. It's so easy to just project it outward.
I agree. And there's really no looking back. And most of the founders, I now count myself in that category, not something I ever thought I'd be. But this is part of, as you said, it's part of your DNA, and you have to listen to it. And as opposed to subrogating yourself as a stuntman, right?
Yeah.
And putting yourself in service to someone else's mission, right? It's to become your own.
That's right.
Right. And so Dad, so you and Dad have this conversation.
Yep.
And he says, yeah, come on over. I need help. Something to that effect?
Something to that effect. It was more
like, yeah.
It was more like, come on over and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
You know, which is fair. And listen, I think it's fair to say I don't have a lick of college under my belt. I didn't, after high school, I stopped. I was very vocal. I'm going to be a stuntman, remember?
Yep.
So I don't need to go to college. I know everything there is that I need to know. So, and I didn't start out saying, I want to take over this business. I want to grow it. I want to blast it off to the moon. That's not how it started. It started just, I need to learn how to become a technician.
Yeah.
I got to learn how to fix this shit.
Yep. So let's talk about, so you come over and let's talk about the program that somehow you all crafted for, let's say, your first 6 months.
Program.
I know. I'm using fancy words.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your first 6 months.
This is great. This is great. To recount all this, I think there's true value in it for me. Forget about the camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Forget this stuff is here. This is us chatting.
This is great. So there was not so much as a program as there was get your ass in the truck and let me show you how it's done. Right. And when I say that, I mean, it was culture shock for me. I came from Hollywood. Remember, I was at red carpet events. I was staying up all night doing God knows what, and so here I am now getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to go service restaurants. We can't be in the kitchen when it's super busy. So you got to work around all that. And so, I'm falling asleep in the passenger seat, just trying to keep my eyes open. He's like, hey, we got shit to do. Wake up.
I love it.
If you know my dad, he's not a ride the coattails kind of guy. So I was making minimum wage at best, which back then, I was making like $10 an hour, $11 an hour, maybe if I was lucky.
And maybe he'd give you some overtime, but I doubt it.
No, that wasn't in the cards. It was like salary at $11 an hour. If the labor board is listening, that's long.
This is a long time ago. This is a long time ago.
No, but so I had to get a second job, right? So I would work with him from 5 a.m. to about 7 p.m., 6 p.m. And then from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., I would go deliver pizzas.
Wow.
Because I'm a very driven person, and I not only needed to live, but I needed to save so I could start building a family and a house and all the stuff I wanted.
Okay. So at some point in time, so you're learning to fix equipment, you're working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And what was the next step in your evolution in turning this into the business it is today? What happened next? Take your time.
Yeah. So my dad had a cousin pass away. This must have been probably, when did I start here? It's probably 2009, 2010.
Okay.
A cousin pass away. I was still a technician at this point, but he had to forward the phones to me because he had to go back to Chicago.
Okay.
And so I took the phones, and so that was the first time I started taking the calls.
Got it.
Right. And so I was interacting with the customers. I was writing the schedules. I was running the service while he was out. I was doing it all.
Running the business. Yep.
And so he got back and he realized that the business still functioned. And so he never took the phones back, ever.
Interesting.
He left the phones forwarded to me for the rest of the time until we actually could hire somebody to answer the phones. So that was the next evolution, because he understood, that I could, whatever, I would do whatever it took, right,
yep.
to keep it afloat.
Yeah, and that it's interesting because you have two kind of things going on there. You've got sometimes an awakening of our mortality, right? When someone passes, and it starts to shift things in our mind if we haven't already thought about this. I think about this all the time, and in my business, she's listening. I want Jordan to run this business one day. And de Gaulle, I always quote de Gaulle incorrectly when I say the graveyards of the world are full of the indispensable.
Yeah. I love that.
Our time will end.
Yeah.
And so how do we build legacy? How do we build sustainability? Like, we are here for a brief period of time and the world keeps on turning.
Yeah.
And so you have that, and then you have the realization that, oh, while I was gone, things are working okay. Yeah. Like, it didn't, like, the business is not necessarily as dependent on me, and we can start to change things to perhaps start to scale. Now, those things may not have awakened in him, but you probably started to have an awakening then and there.
I did. Yeah. And you mind?
You take it wherever you want. This is your time.
Okay. Because I think there's some good lessons in here. At that point, that's when I started to understand my capabilities at the most simple sense of the word, right? Answering the phones, doing the schedule, running the service. I mean, capabilities, that's a really strong word for that, right?
Yeah.
But it started to instill this confidence in me that I could actually do this. Because I think any entrepreneur, especially coming, in this industry, going from tech to owner, man, that imposter syndrome is a real thing. Am I cut out for this, or should I just be a technician? Like what, And so I really started to lean into this. So I started to get my arms around the back end, right? How to do the invoicing and the estimating and the parts ordering, procurement, all of that kind of stuff. And then the P&Ls and the balance sheets, just trying to understand what it all meant and tie it all together.
Yep.
And so, move through the years, we started to bring on a couple of employees. And my dad was very clear, hey, if we want to bring on employees, they're your problem, they're not mine. And you got to know my dad, because even today, like, he loves our employees.
Yes.
But back then, that's just not what he wanted. He thought he was going to be working like that for the rest of his life. So you fast forward, and I kind of worked my way up the ranks. I was still in and out of the field, right? I was struggling with, am I good enough? Okay. And this is something that
I think everyone can relate to.
Everyone can relate, right? At some point, am I good enough to do this? And I'm going to talk about another transformation. And excuse me, I'm tired. I had this reception yesterday. I get a little emotional when I'm tired.
Please be emotional. It's okay.
So 2015, my wife, her sisters are best friend. They're Irish twins, 11 months apart. And so my wife gets a call just after Christmas that her sister had the flu. No big deal. She actually worked at a hospital. She was an X-ray tech at the hospital. Came down with the flu, and so one night, it was New Year's Eve. She checked herself into the hospital. She just wanted to be there because she wasn't feeling good. She was like, "Oh, this is the sickest I've ever been," And my wife, riddled with anxiety, love her to death. She said, I'm super worried about my sister. And I said, well, trying to make her feel better. This is not an episode of Grey's Anatomy, sweetie. Everything's going to be fine. She has the flu. 3 hours later, we got a call saying they were doing chest compressions and that she had gotten septic and we lost her that night. There's a lesson in here, I promise. A couple of them, lots of them. It speaks directly to your point earlier, right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, whether it's us or whether it's somebody we love. And that changes you when you're that close to it, right? The days that ensued were some of the hardest days of my life, especially her life, even more so. That was her best friend.
Yeah.
And so I had to be there to support her and her family. And I mean, she was 26 years old, when this happened, her sister. So way too young, and I remember leaving. We had probably 5 or 6 employees at this point. And, I was on a plane that night with Kelly and we got back out to Wisconsin. And I remember coming back and looking around and nothing looked the same. I looked around and I said to myself that everything just looked like an opportunity. There was the imposter syndrome kind of melted away. Everything that didn't matter just kind of melted away. And what I was left with was this raw drive and ambition to conquer the fucking world, because that's we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. My time went from my entire life to today.
You had your mortality moment.
That's it. And so I looked at today and I was like, okay, I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah.
No one's going to bring me there except me.
Yep.
And now it's go time.
Yep.
Thanks for letting me share that.
No,
appreciate it.
Josh, first of all, thank you for opening up and trusting. And you're going to help. You don't know how many people you're going to touch. And I know this is part of your ethos, but to do what you just did, I feel so honored that you feel comfortable sharing that with me. Thank you.
I do also want to just interject one more thing, just because I'd be remiss if I didn't. Since then, her family has pretty much devoted their lives to sepsis awareness, saved countless lives. They do scholarships for nursing interns, x-ray techs, stuff like that. And they've gotten protocols passed through the CDC because all this was somebody that didn't know what was going on. And so they've done immense work. So aside from what it did for me personally after this moment, that mortality moment, I can't speak enough good things about my wife and her family about what they've done.
Yeah. When we're done here today, I'd love to get in touch with her family, because I'm getting ready to do something similar in my own world. I'm public about a condition called CPTSD. It stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It stems from severe childhood abuse that I tried to hide my entire life. And I got to a point where I couldn't deal with it myself anymore. And PTSD, CPTSD, they're related. And I take a look at my life, and I am a miracle within my population, and I feel compelled to help and to give back. And so this year my first way of doing this is I've been writing songs about my recovery, and I'm going to put on a benefit concert in Chicago this fall, and perform these songs and raise money for CPTSD and PTSD charities.
Awesome.
It's not enough. If this is just about me, it's not enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way for me. And that's the same thing with what we're doing here.
Yeah.
If we have to be able to share our stories with other founders and entrepreneurs, because we're all kind of going through the same thing and we just don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's incredible. So All right. So you come back.
Yep.
And you have this, you're going through this internal transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do next? Where does it begin? Or wherever you want to take it.
Yeah. Well, so what I did next, this was 2015, after getting my bearings and completely shifting my mindset. I was unstoppable at that point. I just, for lack of a better term, I just wanted to win. I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted to, make a mark. I wanted to leave behind a story worth telling.
Yep.
Right. And so I see this as kind of the start of that. So what I didn't mention is my wife, Kelly, at the time was pregnant with our first daughter. And so later that year in June, she gave birth to my first daughter, who's 9 now. And, so I went from one transformation to another transformation, right? Because the day I became a dad, I was like, okay, well, now it's really go time, right? I got this little thing in my arms and I'm like, I gotta take care of this.
Yeah.
This is real.
Yep.
And so I'll tell you, Seth, that was at that point, I just tunnel vision to success.
Yep.
Right. We opened up a branch so we opened up a branch in Tucson. Then I brought on a couple of incredibly talented people to help me open a refrigeration and HVAC division.
Yep.
And so we did that. We grew the business even more. I'll kind of fast forward now.
Please.
Right?
Sure.
So we grew the business even more. We outgrew our warehouse that we had bought. So we bought another warehouse. We opened our Houston location in 2019, opened our Albuquerque division in 2020. And in 2019, I wrote a book called Blue is the New White, The Best Path to Success, that nobody told you about until now.
That's how you and I connected. I saw that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so this was a passion project of mine, because I started at this point to see the opportunity that was within this industry. It was really once I started bringing on experienced technicians, which is what I realized I needed to grow. I realized what I was up against. And I was like, holy shit, you guys are making a lot of money.
Yep.
And you are expecting a ton of benefits. And it's like that because it's this way everywhere else. And so I thought it really important to share that message, because that's not a message I ever got when I was in high school or when I was younger.
Yep.
And there was no resources out there that shared that with me. So I published that book, became an Amazon bestseller the following months, which was great. It's been adopted into high schools all over the country.
It's amazing. It must make you feel so proud.
It does. But you know what? Not for me, for the people who actually have direction now.
That's right.
And that's the whole reason I did it, is because, there's people out there that think that it's either, working at McDonald's for the rest of your life, not there's anything wrong with working at McDonald's if that's your cup of tea, or, college.
Yep.
And there's this wide gap, Seth, that we're missing, and it's called the skilled trades.
What can someone like you, that even if they go into stunts first,
Yeah, sure.
but right, let's say you start to develop a trade in high school.
Yep.
And perhaps you go to a vocational school, right, to get certified. You come out as a hot side technician or as an HVAC technician or refrigeration technician, 20 years old. Where can they start? What does that look like?
So we'll start right after high school.
Let's go there.
Yeah. And I would say they can start by knocking on the door of any skilled trades company, an electrical contractor, an HVAC contractor, refrigeration, kitchen equipment, whatever, and saying, I want to learn this trade.
Yep.
Because I'll tell you that I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually heard that by somebody that doesn't have any experience in the industry. Yep. And it's amazing. I had a kid that came in and said, I want to learn this. He was one of my brother's friends.
Well,
and he said, I want to learn this. And I was like, why, man? You got tattoos up and down your arm. He says, you've never mentioned this before. I don't want to go to college and don't have a direction. I want to learn this. And, I kind of knew his personality, and him and I clashed a little bit. And so I said, you know what? Fine. You can take out the trash.
Yep.
And he did. And he was the best trash taker outer there was. And I said, there was one time when he said, when I said something like, oh, the technician forgot this part. It's sitting here. He's at the job. He goes, I'll take it.
Yep.
Okay. So he worked his way all the way from taking out the trash to running parts to being in the PM division to leading our install division.
Wow.
He's no longer with the company. He sought other opportunities,
Yep.
but the fact that we were able to provide that stepping stone to success
It's amazing.
was unbelievable. And it's all because he was relentless in knocking on that door. So yeah, if there's anybody listening that is interested in that or knows somebody interested in that, tell them to start knocking on doors.
Amazing. I love it. So you've taken the company through this transformation. I want to talk about a few things in the scaling journey.
Yeah.
Let's start with opening up a new branch in another state.
Yeah.
Not, listen, even Tucson it's another market,
right.
2-hour drive from here. You get the business here, you get the business there. That was the first one. But let's talk about, let's either take Texas or New Mexico. Talk about that process of and these were de novo. You didn't go acquire an existing business there. So pure de novo, pure startup, likely existing clients, I assume, right? With locations in those markets, really like what you're doing here. Please come take care of us. Okay, entrepreneur, I'm going to go do that. Talk about that process and lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this was a good process. So, I'll start with, we're conditioned to think that failure is bad, right? And when the exact opposite is true, failure is good. It's the only way you can learn anything. It's the only way you can succeed. And so our first attempt, even in Tucson, but our first outside of the state market, which was Houston, it failed so many times before we actually got off the ground, right? I mean, it was, and Seth, I had made this business plan, this market expansion plan. It was global domination, right?
Right.
And it was thorough, and we had everything. We had competitor rates, and we had geographic regions, and we had,
because you're part of peer grouping, and you can get all the data on a spreadsheet right there.
And it was right there. How could it fail?
Right.
So we got it all in, we brought the people on, and we were just stagnant, even with the customers that said, hey, we need you in Houston. We were just stagnant. And the biggest lesson we learned from that is local leadership. And that was something that we were vastly missing.
Yep.
It was something that I think maybe vanity, I thought I could run it remotely. I thought that it would be enough, but it wasn't until we sent one of our own out there that kind of knew the culture, knew the business, knew the style of work.
Yep.
To actually open and run that team.
Yep.
Once we did that,
because you can marry that with local expertise.
You can, right? Absolutely. Yep.
So lesson for founders.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot. I think the best, if you're going to go expand into a new market, de novo, right? Find that person on your team that's the emerging general manager that wants an opportunity. Now, we can also take a look at things like equity, giving them unit economics, right, in that branch, things of that nature. But someone that has come up in your shop, knows what we stand for, knows the operating model, emerging leader. But guess what? There's already a leader doing that job here.
Yep.
And we might lose those people, right, to a local competitor, or they might spin out and go open up their own. If it's in their DNA, you're raising people in your image.
Yeah.
They are going to want to be able to, they're going to want to run their a business. And so you can provide them with that opportunity.
Yeah.
And this is a lesson that, and you've probably then this is one that you can then kind of rinse and repeat. Let's also talk about the customers say, hey, we need you here. And then you show up and it's not quite turning on. What are some of the dynamics with the commercial motion that we have to address when we go to a new market?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because you hear, for instance, we take care of a popular pizza place. They had 70 locations in Houston, and they were one of them that were like, hey, come on out here. Okay, well, that sounds great, right? So we invested in the technicians and the team and, all of that.
And parts and a location and trucks.
Yep, all of that.
Insurance.
Insurance, all the things that come along with it, right? We knew we were going to lose money before we made money, and that's fine. Founders understand that. Entrepreneurs understand that. Well, the other part that we missed was a guarantee of work. It doesn't exist.
Oh, right.
Right?
Oh, right.
Right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, you have 70 stores. So what? Oh, guess what? We're actually we have another vendor out there, obviously. But
Someone's doing the work today.
yeah, so we're gonna start you off with 25% of that. Oh. And HVAC only. Oh, okay. All right. Well, good thing we have 3 other customers, that are there too. And okay, that one's gonna give us 20%. That one's gonna start us on hot side only. Okay. So we
and by the way, it's not guaranteed.
And by the way,
you're a list, right? Because it's urgent.
Yeah, right.
So
it's not gonna break on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other part of it, right? Is that you can't predict when this stuff is gonna break. So we actually started leaning a little bit more into planned maintenance agreements and stuff like that. So we had steady income we could count on, and then that from there we could grow our customer base, and really where we really focused was the customers we already had, right? What do we need to do to get the other 75% of your stores? What do we need to do to get all of your other trades that we can service?
That's right.
And that's where we started to succeed.
Let's also talk about your organization. So this started with Dad, ride along, teach me. All right. Now we are Tucson, Phoenix, Houston, Albuquerque. Somewhere along the way, to be able to do that effectively as a CEO, you've got to start to build an organization.
Yes.
What does that organization look like for you? And then are there certain parts of it, perhaps in the office of the CFO, that you still might be figuring out the right formula?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I want to address one thing first. We've closed our Albuquerque branch.
Okay.
I think I was talking like it was still open.
Got it.
So I just want to make sure that we established it. It's only a couple months ago that we actually officially closed it down. So sometimes I got to remember.
That's okay, and we can talk about that too if you want. We can talk a little bit
about that, but I want to address your question first. So what does the organization look like? Was that your question, basically? So it's gone through several iterations. I don't think that even if we have it figured out now, it will be figured out forever. This is one of the lessons I've learned over the years, right? The business needs look different when you're sub $1 million compared to when you're over $10 million. It's, valleys apart, right?
Absolutely.
And so we've actually just in the last 2 months gone through another restructuring. What happened? I'll give you kind of the lowdown, right? I had a vision when we started the business. So the original five, I mean, they've been here the longest. They probably know the most. It just makes sense that they'll work their way up to the executive team and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. They're loyal guys.
They're loyal.
They
got you here.
Yeah.
You want them to grow with you and the organization. That would be incredible.
You know who's left of the original five? Me and my dad.
Shocked.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
I figured.
Shocked.
And that was just me and my naivety, right? And I didn't know.
Listen, it's also speaks to your DNA.
Sure.
And what you want for others.
Yeah.
I learned this. How I love to throw my anecdotes in. I mean, I remember I learned this in coaching. I can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves.
God, that's so true.
Number one. Number two, and you can and then as we become something different, because we're starting as, it's kind of like this happens more in soccer than other leagues, right? Because in soccer, you can jump up leagues.
Yeah.
Right. In other sports, that doesn't happen.
Sure.
Well, let's say we start way down here and we want to get up to the Premier League. Well, the whole composition, it would be great if every player, as we have success at various layers and we start to jump up, I want you all to become Premier League soccer players. The likelihood, the probability of that occurring is very low.
So low.
And it's fucking hard emotionally to deal with.
Oh, it sure is. Absolutely, and we've gone through every iteration of it. We've hired and fired friends,
Yep.
and listen, I've got my own thoughts on that. I actually think it's a great thing to hire friends.
Yep.
And just so long as you set those expectations going into it, which is the friends that I still have working for me and working with me, I should say.
Yep.
We've set those expectations and we haven't deviated from them. And it makes a world of difference. Anyway, as we moved up through the business, right, and I started to see that the original 5 wouldn't work, the original 10, 15, all this stuff, it became evident what I needed, and that was specialized expertise in certain areas of business. Who can operate, who can function operationally better than me,
Yep.
Financially better than me,
yep.
Who can sell better than I can, right? All this kind of stuff. And so, we through the years, I've been able to identify some really top talent, and I think that's a skill that I don't know what it is, because I don't want to say that this is a natural ability, but I feel like through the course of the business and interacting with so many people that I thought could help my business that didn't, I kind of got an idea for those who could, and I can sniff it out from a mile away.
Pattern recognition and trial and error, and you've realized, right, as we all do, human capital.
Yeah.
And as leaders, as we get further and further from the day-to-day, and we have a goal and a mission that we want to achieve, we are who we are. We have our strength. We can't really, we have to address our weaknesses through others.
Yeah.
It's the only way. And take a look at massive companies, right? And take a look at the teams.
Mm-hmm.
This has to be achieved through, right, human capital.
Yeah.
And through trial and error, right, you start to figure out what works for you, et cetera. You can start to see the pattern recognition. We hear all the same stories. I still today use executive recruiters. I still do it because even if I have who I think is the perfect person, I'm like, but I want eyes on the world.
Yeah.
Why keep, if I've got a need and I've got a great company and I've got my network, what other talent is out there that I might be able to attract that I don't even know about?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. So one of the stories I have about what got you to today won't get you to tomorrow, right? One of my best friends, again, going on the friend thing, he had worked his way up from a dispatcher to my COO. Okay, brought us to about $10 million with him in that seat, which was great. And then we identified other talent that could execute in a different capacity than he could. Right. And so I had to have that difficult conversation. And, so we had that. His ego took it hard.
Yep.
Took it hard, which I don't blame him. I look back on that conversation and I was like, man, from a leadership standpoint, I've got work to do on how I communicate this stuff.
It's hard.
It really is, especially with the difficult conversations. So anyway, he ended up leaving the company, right? He was with us for 8 years up until that point.
It's hard. It's hard for, even if you had delivered that message in the best way, I'm going to give you a little bit of grace.
Yeah.
The ego impact for most people is too much for them to emotional, but we as leaders, this is the responsibility we bear.
Absolutely. I will say, continuing with that story, he's since come back to the organization. And he came back with a new fire, right? He came back with you were right.
Yeah.
And I had to work on myself, and now I'm back. So now he's not sitting in the COO spot, he's sitting in the controller spot. So this is kind of going full circle back to your question, right? And it's not because he has an accounting background. I want to be very clear about this, right? And so this is kind of, to your point, the next step in what we need to figure out as a direction for the company. He is unbelievable and unmatched in his logistics, in his attention to detail, in his leadership ability, leading the team, understanding what the business needs, and even basic financial strategy, right? Which is great, and that's an incredible spot for him to be in. But we're thinking, how much more incredible could he be if there was a CFO above him or working with him to really steer the ship?
Yep.
Right.
And so, and you're going to need it. and you've already identified the need, and because he's boomeranged,
right,
and he's not a CFO by training or a CPA,
right,
and then you're saying to him, hey, this is great, and we need to bring in someone to mentor and develop and help us get to the next level. And so I assume these conversations have already been had.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be talking about it here if they hadn't.
Right.
And so let's talk about some of your journey there in terms of how you've been working through that. It sounds like what's been going on.
So we have we have our CPA that almost acts as a fractional CFO of some kind, but he's in Illinois. He's very remote, and he's limited in his capacity with how he can help. But he's been influential in the business all the way from start to today, which has been great. I know enough about numbers to be dangerous. We've been navigating that, and I do mean dangerous because I will pull the trigger.
Oh yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But him in the controller's seat, that has been really, really good because of just his ability to see the black and white.
Yep.
And when I say that, I mean like living in the numbers is just perfect for him. So we've actually tried to bring in a couple CFOs over the last year and a half, 18 months or so. And boy, I don't know. So this is an area of expertise that I don't really have yet, right? But the CFOs that we brought in were not a culture fit.
Yep.
For lack of a better term, they just rubbed everybody the wrong way, including me, including my dad, including this individual. And and so really similarities between the two. We were almost like, okay, we're 0 for 2 at this point. What are we going to get next?
So the advice is stop trying to do it yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So the good news is, hi, Timmy and everybody at C-Suite Financial Partners. Thanks for being our sponsor.
Hey, looking forward to meeting you.
We're gonna have a call with you. This is addressable, right? Yes. So we'll take this offline. We won't do this here, but we're going to take a look at how you wrote the job spec. How you're thinking about division of labor, what success looks like in the role, what you need you need the same thing with your COO, that relationship, your head of sales, that relationship, there's this balance, right, between you, founder, owner, this balance across the team. And so we talk about cultural fit, competency, situation, size of company, industry, right? And then tactically, what does success look like? And where are we forecasting to go?
Yeah.
And lack of forecasting is probably something that you're really scratching at.
Yeah, a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yes, I get it. Right. So that's the alchemy, right, of this role. And here's the good thing. You don't have to sacrifice any of it.
That's awesome.
It's all addressable.
Yeah.
We'll put you through, hi, Timmy. We'll put you through the machine, right? And so addressable. And it's like, stop trying to do it. You already know this. But sometimes we remind ourselves, and we don't have to do this ourselves. Yeah. Right. There's help. You're not the first company, trust me, in your industry or in any industry to go through this next thing. So now we got a little bit of time left. Yeah. World domination. I open up some branches. I pull one back. World domination, where I am today, where I want to go tomorrow. What's your vision? Yeah. And I also want to talk about something else that's going on, not only in your industry, but other industries. Yeah. There's this world called private equity that has this, it's been a prevailing wind in your industry. Oh, yeah. Massive consolidation in your industry. And it's a path, it's not a path. But where do you want to take this? And you are, to me, you are part of a group of founders that I think, from my perspective, wants to do this without private equity. But who knows? Maybe at some point in time, you're like, if I just had a little bit of growth equity, I could accelerate this more, but maybe I do that on my own terms. Mm-hmm. Tell me about where you want to go and all those dynamics that are swirling and twirling in your industry.
Yeah, that is
it's a loaded question.
Loaded question.
Yeah.
So I'll start with where I want to go. It's no longer world domination. I've grown up a little bit since then, and I've come to understand that there's more to life than dominating the world with your work.
Yep.
You know, my kids are 9 and 6 now. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for freedom. I'm looking to be involved in their life.
Yep.
Again, going back to the mortality conversation, you don't know what tomorrow brings. And so I'm really focused on the present moment. Mm-hmm. That being said, I still have a fire inside me. I still have a drive, right? So our goal is 16 markets and at least $50 million in revenue, right? And so I think that's a comfortable size. When I say comfortable, again, I'm not trying to be the biggest anymore. That's just not it.
Yep.
But I will agree with you. We don't want to do that with private equity. Mm-hmm. I would rather do that myself. And maybe there's a conversation down the road of what that looks like, but that's probably more of an exit conversation than it is a give me fuel conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And which is fine. I love the challenge, Seth. I really do love the challenge. It can be, I don't measure my success by the day. I measure my success by the year. I look back on the year and I say, what did I accomplish? Because if we try to do that every day, it's just not possible.
And we're getting older, man. Those years are getting shorter too.
It feels sure is. Right? You know what I say? Life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. You know what I'm saying?
It's very true. Now, so question there, you know, because I've got some firms I work with that are doing this, and you don't have to answer this question, but what I'm starting to see more of is peer groups starting to say, hey, what if we move this from a peer group to a peer group with shared ownership? Mm-hmm. We can just start to merge together. We don't need to bring in outside capital. We don't need, you're smiling, like, we don't need people to tell us what to do. By the way, we already respect and like each other. We already have shared norms, shared values. We could already see what we could do together. Let's just do that. And then the interesting part of that is, then you get back to this conversation of, yes, and we're founders.
Right.
And how are we going to do this with a collective, with leadership? And how are we going to unify? Because remember what's in our DNA. Mm-hmm. But, you know, going back to superhero mythology, you know, can we become the Justice League?
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's a hard question. It's very predictive, right? I have thought about it. I have talked to people about it.
Yeah.
You know, there is buzz in the industry right now about, you know, how to combat private equity.
Yep.
Right. And this peer group is one of them, right? How do you drive up the multiple without doing anything different? You make friends, mm-hmm. for lack of a better term. Right. And so it exists, but to your point, how do you then structure it with it and operate it as a single entity?
Yep.
You know, it's almost impossible because the very people that are like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea, are the very people who are like, I want to do it my way.
Exactly. And it's interesting. And so I think, so it's interesting, right? And I think what'll happen is you'll either those founders or some subset of them, someone says, I don't want to drive the bus. I want you to drive the bus. I want to be a part of that. But either way, you're going to get there one way or another. You're going to get there in your way. You now know, you've now got the playbook on opening, stabilizing, maturing new branches. You can, and by the way, I can send you, we teach a class on peer group mergers.
Oh, cool.
I'll just send you the material. Did I just give that away? Jordan, don't get upset at me. But I'm excited for you. If there are any thoughts that you want to leave our audience with in the final 4 minutes or however much time you want to take, reflecting on everything we've talked about here, or anything else that's top of mind that you want to share with our audience, what would you like them to take away from this? There's so much you've talked about.
I'll choose a couple of the most important that I kind of touched on a little bit. So the first one is presence. That's really important to me right now.
Yeah.
You know, I am the poster child for living inside your head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll plan my entire life, my entire business, and the life of my families for the next 20 years if you put me in a room alone. But there's power in reeling that back and understanding what's right in front of you and just being in your own body and experiencing the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it might sound corny as I say it out loud, but it's not. It's real, right? And in the day and age that we live in, with information spewing at us from every single angle and people judging everything about us in society any way that they can, and the politics consuming everything, there's so much power in just being able to understand that the most infinite moment you have is right now. So I live by the philosophy, what if every moment in your life exists to get you to the next one?
I love it. And in the moment, keep going. I'm going to pull up a poem to help emphasize your point. Keep going.
Yeah. So that would be one of them. I would also say, in the same vein, Seth, that fear has been redefined in today's world, right? And this is something I learned after Katie passed. There are so many things that we tell ourselves we're afraid of. You know, we're afraid of getting up on stage or making a fool of ourselves or doing a crappy job on that report that we were asked to write, or even, you know, what if we don't coach our kids' team very well? We're so afraid of all these things. And I liken it to being on a tightrope. Right? We're just so closed off because we're afraid. We're afraid we're going to fall off this tightrope. Problem is, we don't know if we're 600 feet off the ground or 6 inches off the ground.
Yeah.
But we're on this tightrope and we're just assuming we're 600 feet. And if we fall, if we make one wrong move, man, we're dead. The reality is we're 6 inches.
Yeah.
Most decisions are one more decision away from getting right back on that tightrope.
Yep.
Right. And it's just, we've lost that. We've forgot that. And there's so much power in understanding that. That's why I can step up on stage and talk to thousands of people, and people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day. And I think that's really important to remind ourselves, especially as founders, entrepreneurs, you know, executives. It's just, it's never as hard as you think it is.
Yeah.
Things are hard, but it's never as hard as you think it is.
Yep. Yeah. It's, I want to reflect with you.
Yeah.
I want to give you a poem, and then I'll tell you another story later. We'll see if we have time here, but I'm going to go back to your first notion. This is a poem by Layla Allen. How brave are you for slowing down, for not finishing that to-do list? How courageous you are for not crossing that finish line because your body said enough. How fearless are you for choosing the quiet of your soul over those voices driving you always toward more. How bold, how rebellious, you out there honoring your own natural rhythm, going against the culture's breakneck speed. I want to make heroes of those who slow down. I want to make heroes of those who listen to their bodies and do not strive for more than what the soul truly needs. I want to make heroes of those who do not force or push, but surrender to each moment as it opens. I want to applaud those who may not be driven towards success as we know it, but instead are nurturing something deep and subtle and needed. I want to celebrate those brave enough to cease all doing, even for a second, and sit with the ache in their hearts. A task many find harder than summiting the highest peak. I want to make heroes of those who honor their limitations, who are unable to keep up with the busyness of our times, yet show up to each profound, necessary moment. Truly, it is an act of courage and rebellion to do any such thing in a world demanding you resist your own self, your own rhythm, your own soul. The paradox is that often when we cease our incessant doing, even for a minute, and listen to that quiet voice within, we discover what it is we absolutely must do and what instead can fall away. We finally hear the call towards what serves our soul and what then will serve the world. Nothing more, nothing less. A hero is simply someone brave. So come, be softly brave. Be a new, quieter kind of hero. Few may applaud, it's true, but your soul certainly will.
It's amazing.
You're amazing.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
I think that poem also speaks to exactly what you started the episode talking about, right? With the philosophy behind turning your superpower onto yourself.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Let's leave it there.
Let's do that.
All right. See you, man.
All right. See you, Seth. Thanks.